The hall was vast and bright with walls that curved like the inside of a living shell. The alien council gathered in silence, their eyes glowing in the dim light, their voices hushed like wind through cold stone. They had called a human before them, a lone figure who stood at the center of the chamber, calm but watched by hundreds of sharp gazes. The aliens had planned this trial for years. They had studied many species across the galaxy. They believed that none could pass such a test. They said that only minds forged in ages of survival could even attempt it. Today they would see if the humans deserved to be seen as more than reckless wanderers of a violent world. They would test his knowledge of poisonous plants brought from the farthest corners of the stars. The first tray slid forward across the shining floor. It held stems that twisted like serpents, leaves that shimmered as if alive, and roots that pulsed with hidden venom. The council leaned closer, waiting to see fear or hesitation, waiting to prove that this creature from Earth was nothing but a reckless fool who had wandered too far from his home world. But the human did not tremble. His hands were steady, his breath slow. His eyes moved across the tray, as if he had seen such things before. The silence thickened. Aliens whispered in their own tongues, words of doubt, words of mockery, words of curiosity. Yet the man did not hear them. Or perhaps he did, and simply did not care. He bent closer. His fingers hovered just above the surface of the leaves. One alien hissed a warning. Another shouted that to touch the leaf meant certain death. But the human only smiled. He brushed the edge of a thorn with the back of his hand. The crowd gasped. A sharp intake of air echoed around the chamber. But nothing happened. The man remained calm, as if the poison itself had bowed to him. The council leader rose, a tall creature with silver skin and eyes like fire. His voice shook the walls as he declared that this was only the beginning. He said the test was not about bravery. It was about truth. He ordered the human to explain what he saw, what he knew, and why he dared to touch what none in the chamber would even breathe near. The human lifted one leaf between his fingers. The veins glowed faintly with a strange light. He spoke in a quiet voice, simple and steady. He said this plant was dangerous. Its juice could kill a beast in minutes. Yet its roots could be boiled and turned into medicine. He said he had seen such balance before on his home world, where one leaf could heal a wound while the next leaf could end a life. He said survival was never about fear. It was about knowing, learning, and remembering. The word spread through the hall like fire through dry grass. Aliens leaned forward. Some muttered in disbelief. Others grew uneasy. One whispered that humans must have stolen this knowledge from secret records. But another whispered that perhaps they carried such knowledge in their blood, forged in the crucible of a world filled with danger every hour, every day. The second tray was brought out. It carried flowers that shone like tiny stars, petals so bright they seemed harmless. But the council knew they were filled with slow venom that drained life breath by breath. The human touched the stem and laughed softly. He said that beauty often hides the deepest danger. He told them of plants on Earth, bright berries that children must never eat, flowers that smelled sweet but could poison the air. He told them of how his people had learned through pain, through trial, through endless generations who lived and died to pass on the memory of which leaf to trust and which to burn. The aliens stirred uneasily. Some shook their heads, some folded their arms in doubt, but many listened with growing silence. The council leader frowned, his pride cracking like thin glass. He had expected confusion. He had expected failure. But the human spoke as if the galaxy itself was only another forest to walk through and learn from. The third tray came, roots black as night, twisted like bone, their scent bitter and sharp. The man studied them and said they were not only poison but also fire. He said they could be crushed and turned into powder that burned like fuel. He said they could kill, they could cook, they could protect, they could destroy, all hidden in a single root. He said every plant held a choice to be used for harm or for hope. The chamber grew colder as the words echoed. The council was shaken. They had thought the test would humiliate the human. They had thought it would prove his weakness. But now they began to fear it would show something else, something far greater. They looked into his calm eyes and saw no fear, no confusion, only a steady light that came from a world that had taught its children how to face death in every forest, every field, every shadow of the land. And so the first part of the trial ended not with laughter but with silence, a silence that weighed heavy on every soul in the hall. The human stood tall, the trays of poison before him, and the aliens wondered if they had made a mistake in calling him here, for the test had only just begun, and already the galaxy was watching with unease. Already the galaxy was whispering that perhaps humanity was not what they thought. Perhaps humanity was something far more dangerous and far more enduring. The chamber did not empty after the first test. If anything, more beings pressed in from the edges, eager to see what would happen next. The Alien Council had meant for this to be a quiet trial, a simple spectacle to confirm their prejudice. But word had already spread through the station, like fire racing through dry forests. A human was being tested. A human was surviving. That was enough to draw every curious mind in orbit. The amphitheater was now crowded with ambassadors, soldiers, and merchants from dozens of worlds. Their eyes reflected the glow of the hovering trays, each carrying plants harvested from across the galaxy. Some had leaves shaped like blades, others grew in fractal spirals, and a few seemed to breathe with a pulse of inner light. The human stood calmly in the center of it all. To him, this was not a stage. It was only another test of survival, and survival was the one skill his kind never lacked. Murmurs passed through the tiers. Some aliens whispered that the human had cheated. Others swore he carried hidden devices. A few dared to say nothing at all, their silence betraying a fear they did not want to admit. For them, watching the human touch poison with steady hands was like watching fire obey water. It broke the laws they thought unshakable. The council leader, silver-skinned and proud, raised his staff. The murmurs died instantly. His voice echoed through the chamber, deep and cold. The trial is not finished. The first task was simple. Any fool may name what he has seen before. The second test will prove whether this human truly knows, or whether he only pretends. A ripple of expectation ran through the chamber. The second tray floated forward. On it lay a cluster of plants unlike the first. These were subtle, quiet things, with petals soft as silk and scents so faint they barely touched the air. They looked harmless, fragile even, but the aliens knew better. These were killers of the slow kind. Their toxins did not burn or stab. They seeped into blood like whispers, stealing breath hour by hour until nothing remained but silence. The human stepped forward. He did not rush. His fingers brushed along the petals, soft as cloth, yet carrying death within. He lifted one stem and studied its pale glow. For a moment, he said nothing, letting the silence stretch, letting the tension coil around the crowd like a tightening rope. Then he spoke. On my world, beauty is not safe. The brightest flowers can hide the sharpest teeth. The sweetest scents can mask poison strong enough to fell a giant. These are no different. The words fell like stones into still water. Aliens leaned forward, their eyes narrowing, their minds racing. The human did not stop. He explained the way the plant's oils would creep into the skin. He described how the petals, if burned, would release fumes that brought sleep and then death. Yet he also pointed out that the seeds could be ground into powder and used to numb pain, to quiet wounds that would otherwise drive a warrior mad. The council chamber stirred. Whispers grew into arguments. Some accused him of lying, of inventing tales, but others whispered that his explanation matched their own secret tests, results hidden for centuries. How could he know this? How could a creature from a distant world read the nature of alien life, as if it were nothing more than an old memory? The human placed the plant back on the tray with care. His face held no pride, no arrogance, only calm certainty. We learned long ago that survival is not about strength. It is about knowledge. Every root, every berry, every leaf has two sides. One side kills. The other saves. The choice is ours. Gasps rippled through the chamber. Some aliens folded their arms, trying to look unimpressed, but their eyes betrayed them. Others leaned closer, their breath caught in their throats. The council leader tightened his grip on the staff, his silver eyes burning with something darker than anger. It was fear. The human's words carried through the hall like a quiet storm. He told them of Earth, of how his ancestors lived among forests filled with dangers. He told them of bitter roots that starved the stomach and wild mushrooms that blurred the mind. He told them of berries that healed fevers and others that killed a child before the night was done. He described how families passed down the knowledge, how grandmothers and hunters taught children to see, to smell, to taste with caution, each lesson carved into memory by blood and loss. The audience was silent now. The echoes of his voice filled every corner of the hall. The images he painted, children learning through hardship, tribes remembering through pain, hung in the air like heavy smoke. This was not the knowledge of scholars. This was the knowledge of survivors. The council's second judge, a tall creature with horns like coiled steel, leaned forward. His voice was sharp. "Do you mean to say, human, that your people grew strong through death? That you learned by losing?" The human turned to him. His eyes were steady. "Yes, we learned by watching the weak die, and by carrying their lessons forward. Every mistake was a teacher. Every grave was a warning. That is why we remember." The chamber shifted. Aliens looked at one another uneasily. This was not how their own histories read. Many species had been sheltered by worlds that fed them without effort, or guided by ancestors who held back every risk. Humanity had no such shield. Humanity had only struggle, and through struggle had come endurance. The third tray appeared. This time the plants were darker. Black roots twisted like skeletal fingers, their surfaces rough and uneven. The air around them was sharp, almost metallic. Many aliens turned away, unwilling to breathe too deeply. The human studied them carefully. He lifted one, cracked it open with his bare hands, and revealed the powder inside. He held it to the light, his face thoughtful. "This one is dangerous. Burn it and the smoke blinds. Swallow it and the stomach burns from within. But if you mix it with water, in just the right measure, it becomes fuel. It will burn longer than wood, longer than oil. It is not only poison, it is fire." A shiver spread through the audience. The idea that a single root could hold so many faces unsettled them. To the human, this was only natural. To them, it was alien. He had seen in moments what their scholars had debated for generations. He had turned danger into a tool with a glance. The council leader spoke again, his voice low and heavy. "You speak as though everything is a weapon in your hands, as though no danger can stand without being bent to your will. Is this the way of your people?" The human did not hesitate. "Yes. On Earth, every danger became a lesson. Every lesson became a weapon. Every weapon became a way to live. That is how we survived." The words rang like thunder. No one moved. No one dared to laugh now. They only watched, their eyes wide, their throats dry. The trial that had been designed to humiliate had instead revealed something they could not explain. Humanity did not fear poison. Humanity turned it into strength. The second test was finished. The trays were carried away, though the silence remained. The council had planned to show weakness, but instead they had shown something else, something vast and unsettling. The chamber was restless after the second test. The crowd had come expecting failure. Instead, they had witnessed calm mastery. A human had touched poison, named it, and turned it into both medicine and weapon. The silence in the amphitheater carried weight, as if the stars themselves leaned closer to listen. The council leader tried to hide his unease, but it clung to him like a shadow. He ordered the third stage to begin, yet the human did not move immediately. He stood still, his gaze distant, as if his mind had traveled somewhere far away. It was not arrogance. It was memory. For the human, the sight of alien plants had awakened something older than the stars around him. He remembered forests of earth, damp with rain, alive with insects and birds. He remembered nights by the fire, when the sky was dark and the only light came from flames licking against wood. He remembered a voice, old, patient, steady. His grandmother. She had been small, her hair streaked with silver, her hands worn from years of work. But her eyes had carried the strength of generations. She had taken him into the forests when he was still a boy, showing him which roots to dig and which to leave untouched. She had been close to mushrooms, her voice low, teaching him which colors meant life and which meant death. She had carried stories of ancestors who learned by loss, who carried wisdom forward, so the next would not die the same way. He could almost hear her voice now. "Do not trust beauty. Do not fear ugliness. Look deeper. The earth hides its truths in strange skins. The memory steadied him. When he looked back at the council, his expression was calm again. He was not in their chamber anymore. He was in the forests of his home, and that gave him strength. The council presented the next test. The tray was different this time. It carried not one plant, but many, gathered together like a puzzle. Roots tangled with vines, flowers blooming beside thorns, leaves broad and thin in a single cluster. The challenge was not to name one danger, but to unravel how they worked together. The aliens waited, certain this time he would stumble. The human bent close. He inhaled, not foolishly, but carefully. His fingers traced the veins of a leaf. He lifted a root and snapped it gently. The sound echoed sharp in the hall. Then he spoke. These are not separate. They are family. Each one feeds the other. On Earth, we have the same. Plants that seem harmless until combined. Alone they are weak. Together they are powerful. He began to explain. The vine, he said, carried a mild toxin that numbed the mouth. The flower, if eaten afterward, carried a poison that slipped past defenses because the tongue could no longer taste its warning. The root, when boiled with the others, became a drink that dulled the senses, a trap for prey. Gasps rose from the audience. They had studied these plants for decades and only suspected such connections. Yet the human had unraveled it in moments. But he was not finished. His voice grew softer, as if speaking to someone unseen. My grandmother once showed me how plants speak in silence, how a bitter taste warns of danger, how a burning tongue tells you to stop. She taught me to listen. Without her, I would not stand here. For a moment, the chamber was no longer filled with aliens. It was filled with the image of a boy walking beside an old woman through shadowed woods, learning how to survive in a world that did not forgive mistakes. The aliens felt it. They saw it, and some of them shivered. The council leader broke the silence. You speak of Earth as though it were a death world. Do you mean to tell us your kind grew strong in constant struggle? The human's eyes turned toward him. Yes, Earth never gave freely. We learned because we had to. Every step could be danger. Every meal could be poison. We carry those lessons still. The leader frowned, but he did not answer. His silver eyes burned with thought. The fourth tray was revealed. A single plant rested upon it. Its stalk was tall, its leaves broad, its scent faintly sweet. Many in the chamber leaned forward. They knew this one. 4 generations, scholars had debated its nature. Some swore it was harmless. Others claimed it killed slowly. No one had ever agreed. The human stepped forward. He touched the stalk, then broke open a leaf. A sharp liquid oozed out, thick and milky. He studied it. Then he smiled faintly. This one is tricky. If you eat it raw, it poisons the stomach. But if you dry it, crush it, and burn it, the smoke clears infection from wounds. I have seen plants like this on Earth. Always 2 faces. Always a choice. The audience erupted in whispers. For centuries, the galaxy's finest minds had failed to reach agreement. Yet a human, a single wanderer from a distant world, had explained it as though it were nothing more than an old story told beside a fire. The council leader slammed his staff to silence them. His voice thundered. Enough. These are tales, nothing more. You could not know what you claim. The human turned slowly to face him. I know because my people learned the hard way. On Earth, knowledge was not given. It was paid for. Every mistake was written in graves. Every cure was bought with suffering. That is why we do not forget. That is why I cannot be wrong. The chamber froze. The words rang too true to dismiss. The council leader's anger faded into silence, and silence was worse than fury. The human stepped back, his eyes moving across the gathered faces. He saw the predators with claws, the scholars with books, the soldiers with weapons. He saw their unease, and he knew something had changed. They had come to mock him. Now they feared him. The test was not only about plants anymore. It was about what humans represented. A species that turned pain into wisdom. A people who looked at death and carved survival out of it. A race that could see weapons where others saw weakness, and cures where others saw only death. The chamber lights flickered as the trays were carried away. The human stood alone once more in the circle of stone. But he did not feel alone. He felt the presence of his grandmother, of every ancestor who had walked through danger and left their memory behind. Their voices were in him, and through him they spoke to the galaxy. The third part of the trial was over, yet no one celebrated. The council sat in heavy silence. The crowd did not cheer. Even the air seemed to hold its breath. For the first time, the galaxy understood that humanity's strength did not lie in weapons or ships. It lay in memory. It lay in the quiet voices of old teachers, in the scars of hard lessons, in the refusal to forget. And that truth was far more dangerous than any poison. The chamber was quiet in a way that felt unnatural. The air itself seemed to hesitate, as though unsure whether to move. After the third stage of the trial, the council members had grown restless. They had expected arrogance from the human, or confusion, or perhaps desperation. Instead, they had received patience, memory, and a steady confidence that unsettled them more than anger ever could. Now came the fourth test. The attendants brought forth a tray unlike the others. It was covered with a transparent shell, a barrier of energy humming faintly around it. Even the council judges shifted uneasily when they saw it. The plant within was no ordinary specimen. It glowed faintly, as if alive with fire. Its long stalks bent like reeds, and its blossoms opened with a slow rhythm, exhaling faint clouds of vapor. The air around it shimmered with toxins so potent that the guards handling the tray wore sealed armor. The council leader's voice cut through the silence. This plant has no name in our languages. For centuries, our scholars have argued over its purpose. It kills swiftly if touched. It poisons the blood if breathed. And yet, some claim it holds secrets beyond death. If the human wishes to prove himself, let him speak. The human stepped forward. The vapor curled toward him like smoke, but he did not flinch. His eyes studied the plant with calm focus. The crowd leaned closer, whispering warnings. Some called him foolish. Others waited to see arrogance punished. But the human did not rush. He crouched near the barrier, watching how the plant moved, how the vapor spread, how the light within pulsed. He closed his eyes for a moment, listening not with his ears, but with memory. Then he stood and spoke. This plant is dangerous, yes. Its vapor kills the lungs. Its thorns carry venom that shuts the heart. But it is not only death. If you crush its stem and let it dry, the powder can numb pain stronger than any drug. If you burn it in open air, the smoke blinds predators for minutes at a time. To you it is only poison. To me it is choice. Choice between weapon and medicine. Choice between fear and survival. A shock passed through the chamber. Some aliens rose to their feet, shouting disbelief. Others stared in silence, their eyes wide, their thoughts heavy. The council leader slammed his staff against the floor. Sparks leapt into the air. You dare claim knowledge beyond the greatest minds of this galaxy. You, a child of a primitive world, presume to tell us what this plant is. The human's voice did not rise. It stayed calm, steady, and soft. Yes, because my people have walked among poisons like this for thousands of years. We learned to see patterns. We learned to find meaning where others saw only death. This is not arrogance. This is survival. The leader's silver eyes burned. Yet he could not speak, because even as he listened, he knew the human's words carried truth. The second judge, horned and sharp, tried to recover the trial's control. If what you say is true, then show us how. Prove it. If you claim this plant can be more than death, then demonstrate. The human tilted his head. He did not touch the plant, for that would be madness. Instead, he asked for a flame. Confused, one of the guards hesitated but obeyed. A torch was brought forward. The human instructed that a thin slice of the plant be placed near the flame. The vapor ignited instantly, not in fire, but in a thick white smoke. The chamber filled with a dense cloud that blinded the council, choking their sight, though not their lungs. Guards stumbled. Ambassadors clutched at railings. For a long moment, panic spread. Then the smoke thinned, and the human's voice cut through the air. Blindness. Temporary. Useful in battle. Useful in escape. A weapon that does not kill, but gives time. The alien stared, shaken. The plant had always been seen as death incarnate. None had considered its other faces. Yet the human had revealed it in moments, Not through technology, not through research, but through thought. The council chamber erupted in noise. Some shouted that the trial was rigged. Others cried out that humanity must be dangerous beyond measure. A few, quiet and thoughtful, said nothing at all, because they had begun to understand what was unfolding. The human placed the torch down and looked around. His face was calm, but his words carried weight. On Earth, we learned that nothing is only one thing. Death can heal. Pain can teach. Weakness can become strength. It is not the plant that matters. It is how we choose to use it. The words cut deeper than any blade. Some aliens avoided his gaze. Others glared, but their eyes betrayed unease, because they understood what he was saying, even if they did not want to admit it. Humanity saw the universe differently. Where others saw limits, humans saw paths. Where others saw fear, humans saw possibility. The council leader tried once more to assert control. His voice thundered. You twist words. You turn danger into comfort. Do you think we will believe that everything can be tamed? That nothing is beyond you? The human answered simply, I do not believe everything can be tamed, but I believe everything can be understood. And once it is understood, it can be turned. To harm, to help, to whatever we decide. That is the power of knowledge. That is the gift Earth gave us. The chamber grew still. The crowd's whispers died into silence. They were not looking at a test subject anymore. They were looking at a teacher, a survivor, and a threat. The unexpected answer had shifted the ground beneath their feet. What had been meant as humiliation had become revelation. The galaxy was seeing the truth for the first time. The trial moved on, but the fourth stage lingered in every mind. The plant that had been nothing but fear had become a lesson. Humanity did not see the universe as others did. To them, nothing was absolute. Everything was potential. When the guards carried the tray away, their hands shook, not from the poison, but from the knowledge of what they had seen. The ambassadors whispered to each other, their voices sharp and urgent. Soldiers looked at the human and measured him differently now. Scholars bent low to record every word, afraid to miss even a single sentence. The council sat in heavy silence. They had not expected this. They had not prepared for an answer that turned their wisdom into dust. For centuries, the galaxy had thought itself masters of knowledge. But here was a human, speaking as if he had walked their path long before them. The unexpected answer was not just about plants. It was about humanity itself, a species that carried scars like books, a people who turned danger into strength, a race that looked at death and whispered, "What else can you give me?" And as the chamber lights flickered once more, one thought echoed in every mind. If a human could see such truths in a single plant, what might they see in the galaxy itself? The chamber was not the same as it had been when the trial began. The walls still glowed with faint light. The tray still floated across the polished floor. But the silence was heavier now. It was no longer the silence of mockery or expectation. It was the silence of unease. The fourth test had shaken the council. They had expected to prove superiority. Instead, they had been forced to witness a human turn death into strategy. The unexpected answer still hung in the air like smoke that refused to clear. The ambassadors in the gallery muttered in low voices. Some demanded the trial end at once, saying enough had been proven. Others whispered that it must continue, for they were desperate to learn how far human knowledge went. The soldiers shifted in their armor, watching the human not as a curiosity now, but as a possible enemy. The human stood calm and still in the center of the chamber. His hands were relaxed at his sides. His gaze was steady. He did not appear proud, or fearful, or eager to impress. He appeared simply present, like a rock in the middle of a storm. That calmness unsettled the council more than any arrogance could. The council leader rose from his seat. His silver skin gleamed under the chamber lights, but his voice carried a tension he could not hide. We continue. The trial is not complete until all tests are passed. The human will face the fifth challenge. The attendants wheeled forward another tray. This one was not glowing with strange lights, nor covered with a protective shell. It looked simple, almost harmless. A collection of roots, stems, and flowers, laid neatly across the polished surface. Yet the chamber shifted with unease. The council knew this collection well. It was called the puzzle tray. Dozens of species had been tested with it before. Each plant was mild alone, but when mixed, boiled, or ground together, they became unpredictable. Some combinations healed, others killed. A few created madness that lingered forever. No alien had ever solved the tray completely. It was designed to confuse, to overwhelm. The human stepped forward. His eyes moved across the plants. He bent close, lifted a root, and inhaled its scent. Then he placed it back and chose a flower, brushing its petals with his fingers. He paused, and then he began to speak. This is not one puzzle. It is many. Each plant carries a piece of the answer. On Earth, we learn to look for patterns. If one plant numbs, another awakens. If one burns, another cools. If one poisons, another cures. Alone they are dangerous. Together they are language. The chamber leaned forward as he began to explain. He picked up the root again. He said it carried bitter toxins that slowed the blood, but he pointed to the flower beside it and said its oils cleansed that poison when brewed together. He held up a third plant, a sharp leaf, and explained that it carried no danger alone, but when mixed with the others, it created heat that could ignite. The council judges shifted uncomfortably. For decades, their scholars had studied these plants in fragments. None had ever spoken of them as if they belonged to the same family. But the human unraveled the puzzle as though he had been waiting for it all along. The second judge, horned and sharp, leaned forward with narrowed eyes. How do you know this? These are alien species. They are not from your world. Do you claim that Earth has already prepared you for every poison in the galaxy? The human did not smile. He only answered softly. Earth prepared us for survival. It taught us how to see beyond what is in front of us. A plant is not alien. It is life, and life follows rules. Once you know the rules, you see the patterns everywhere. The answer cut deep. Some aliens shook their heads, unwilling to accept it, but others looked at one another with growing fear. Because if the human was right, then Earth had given its children not just survival on their own world, but survival anywhere. The human continued. He explained how the plants could be combined into a tea that dulled fear and pain, a drink that could steady soldiers in battle. He explained how a mixture of roots and flowers could become a slow poison, impossible to detect until it was too late. He explained how the petals, dried and burned, created a smoke that drove insects away but also suffocated small animals. Every word was a revelation. Every word was a threat. The council leader rose, his voice sharp. You twist danger into weapons. You see harm in every leaf. Is that all humanity knows? To turn life into war? The human turned his gaze upon him. His eyes were calm, but his words were heavy. No, we see both. War and peace. Harm and healing. Every plant is a choice. But we do not close our eyes to one side of it. We accept that both exist. And because we accept it, we survive. The chamber was silent. It was not the silence of disbelief now. It was the silence of fear. Because they understood the truth in his words. Humanity did not see the galaxy as they did. Where others saw barriers, humans saw doors. Where others saw death, humans saw tools. And that made them dangerous beyond measure. One ambassador whispered to another, if they can turn poisons into weapons, what else can they turn? The words spread through the chamber like a shadow, and many dared not speak them aloud. The council's third judge, a creature with translucent skin and pulsing veins, finally spoke. If humans carry such knowledge, then you are a threat to us all. For what you call survival, others will call conquest. The human's eyes met his without flinching. Perhaps, but conquest is not our goal. We did not ask to be tested. You asked, and now you see the truth. You wanted to know who we are. This is who we are. The judge fell silent. He had no reply. The puzzle tray was carried away. The attendants moved quickly, eager to escape the weight in the room. The human stepped back, but every eye followed him. No one dared to laugh now. No one dared to dismiss him as a primitive fool. The fifth test had ended, but in truth, the test had changed. It was no longer about poisonous plants. It was about humanity itself. And what the galaxy now feared was not that humans could survive. It was that humans could survive anywhere. As the council recessed briefly to prepare the next stage, the galleries erupted in whispers. Ambassadors sent coded messages to their fleets. Scholars scribbled frantic notes. Soldiers tightened their grips on weapons, though none of them dared to move against the human. In the shadows, one alien muttered a single phrase. It spread through the crowd until it became a silent chorus. If they can do this with plants, what will they do with us? The doubt was gone. Only fear remained. The chamber no longer felt like a hall of judgment. It felt like a battlefield where no weapon had been drawn, yet every heart was already wounded. The council's pride had been chipped away piece by piece, each answer from the human striking like a hammer against glass. Now the cracks were wide enough that even those who hated humanity most could not pretend they did not see them. The fifth test had ended with silence. The council members did not speak, their jaws tight, their eyes burning. The ambassadors in the gallery whispered frantically, their voices sharp and nervous. Fear had taken root. It was spreading faster than any poison ever could. The council leader rose at last, his silver staff trembling in his hand though he tried to hide it. His voice thundered across the chamber, but it did not carry the same certainty it had before. The trial is not yet complete. The human has not yet faced the final stage. Bring forth the last test. The attendants moved slowly this time. Their armor creaked with tension. They carried a single container, heavy and sealed, its surface marked with warning sigils from more than 20 languages. When they placed it on the glowing platform, even the judges leaned back slightly. The chamber lights dimmed, as though the plant inside demanded its own space. The leader spoke again. This root is ancient. It is older than most of our histories. No record explains it fully. We only know it kills. A touch to the skin burns flesh. A drop in the mouth ends life. And yet, some say it holds the power to cleanse other poisons. For centuries, no one has solved it. If the human claims wisdom, let him face this. The shell opened. Inside lay a black root, twisted and gnarled, its surface gleaming like wet stone. It looked harmless in its stillness, yet the air around it seemed heavier, as if it bent light itself. The crowd stirred, breaths caught in their throats. The human stepped forward. He did not hesitate. He bent down and lifted the root carefully, holding it in both hands. The guards gasped, some reaching forward in alarm, but he remained untouched. The root's poison did not strike him down instantly. He studied it closely, turning it in the light. Then he broke it open. A thick sap oozed from its core, glistening dark red like blood. A hush fell over the chamber. The human raised the broken root for all to see. This, he said quietly, is not only death. The outer shell carries venom that burns the skin, yes, but the inner sap is different. It is thick, heavy, and bitter. It can neutralize the very poison that surrounds it. The shell kills. The core saves. Two truths in one body. The word spread like thunder. The gallery erupted in shouts. Some cried that it was impossible. Others shouted that it explained centuries of confusion. The council judges stared in silence, their certainty unraveling. The leader's grip on his staff weakened. The human continued, his voice steady, almost gentle. On Earth, we have roots like this. Plants that carry poison on the outside and medicine within. Our ancestors learned this by trial, by error, by loss. They learned to dig deeper, to never trust the surface alone. What kills may also heal. What destroys may also protect. It depends on how you use it. The silence after his words was crushing. The chamber felt smaller, as though the walls themselves were drawing closer. The council leader's face twisted. He slammed his staff against the floor, sparks flying. Enough. You speak with the tongue of demons. You turn death into comfort. You twist the laws of life into riddles. Do you think we will let you stand above us with your poisoned wisdom? The human looked at him, calm as ever. I do not stand above you. You brought me here. You asked for this trial. You wanted to see if we could survive your tests. Now you see. It is not my fault you do not like the answer. The word struck harder than any weapon. The gallery went silent again. No one dared move. The council leader's silver eyes flickered with fury. But beneath it, fear shone brighter. He looked not at a subject, but at a mirror reflecting weakness. The second judge, horned and proud, tried to speak, but his voice shook. If this is true, then humanity carries a danger no species should bear. You see weapons in everything. You see power where others see death. You are not survivors. You are conquerors waiting for a reason. The human did not flinch. No, we are not conquerors. We are survivors. But you are right about one thing. We see what others do not. We do not close our eyes to danger. We face it. And once we face it, we are never the same again. That is our strength. The judge fell silent. The translucent-skinned third judge leaned forward, his veins glowing faintly. His voice was low, almost afraid. Then there is no limit to you. If you can turn poison into medicine, if you can find strength in weakness, then you will change everything you touch. You will change the galaxy itself. The human did not deny it. He only said, perhaps, but you were the ones who asked the question. The council leader gripped his staff tighter. His silver skin rippled with anger. He wanted to condemn the human, to declare the trial void, to end it all before the balance shifted further. But his voice would not obey, because deep inside, he knew the truth. The chamber was breaking. The council was breaking. Their authority, their certainty, their pride, all of it crumbling under the weight of one human's steady words. The galleries began to whisper again. Ambassadors spoke of alliances. Soldiers muttered of wars. Scholars trembled with excitement and fear. The human had not lifted a weapon, yet he had reshaped the galaxy's image of his people. The council leader raised his staff once more, but before he could speak, another voice rang out. It was not a judge. It was an ambassador from a distant world, her voice sharp and clear. Enough. This is not a trial anymore. This is revelation. You wanted to test a human. Instead, you have shown us what humanity is. And I say this, if they can survive death itself, then perhaps we should fear them, or perhaps we should follow them. The chamber erupted. Some shouted in fury. Others cheered. The council leader pounded his staff, trying to restore order, but the tide had shifted. His authority no longer commanded the hall. The crowd's voice drowned him out. The human stood silently in the center, the broken root still in his hands. He did not speak. He did not need to. His presence said enough. The sixth test had ended, and with it, the council's control shattered. For centuries, the galaxy had believed itself the master of knowledge, the judge of strength, the keeper of wisdom. But in one hall on one day, before one human, that illusion broke. And in the silence that followed, every species present knew one thing. The galaxy would never see humanity the same way again. The chamber was broken. The council had lost its grip, and the audience no longer obeyed their silence. Whispers turned to shouts, arguments clashed with laughter, and fear moved like a current through the hall. Yet in the center of it all stood the human, calm, steady, and silent, holding the broken root in his hands as if it were nothing more than a memory. The council leader slammed his staff against the floor again, sparks flying, his silver eyes blazing. Enough. This trial is over. The human has spoken lies dressed as wisdom. He has turned this chamber into chaos. He must be silenced. But even as he spoke, his words did not command the same weight they once had. Too many had seen the truth. Too many had felt the shift. An ambassador shouted back from the gallery. He has spoken no lies. He has shown us what you feared. You wanted to prove humanity weak. Instead, he showed us strength that does not break. The crowd stirred. Some agreed, others protested, but the sound was no longer controlled. The chamber had become a storm. The human lifted the root higher, letting its dark sap glisten in the light. His voice carried through the noise, with quiet power. You asked me to name death. I showed you life. You asked me to see poison. I showed you choice. You tested me with fear. I answered with memory. This is not about plants. It is about who we are. The voices fell into silence, not because he shouted, but because he did not need to. Every word rang with a truth that none could deny. The human's calmness cut sharper than anger ever could. He looked across the chamber, to the ambassadors, to the soldiers, to the judges themselves. On Earth, survival was never a gift. It was a war fought every day. The soil gave food, but it also gave poison. The rivers gave water, but they also gave disease. The forests gave shelter, but they also gave predators. We learned not to trust appearances. We learned not to fear death, but to listen to it. We learned that every danger hides a lesson, and every lesson hides a choice. The council leader shouted back, his voice strained with desperation. And what choice do you offer us, human? Conquest? Slavery? Do you mean to rule us with this twisted wisdom of yours? The human's gaze did not waver. No, I offer you truth. The truth that survival is not strength alone. It is not wealth. It is not power. Survival is memory. It is learning from pain. It is refusing to repeat the same mistake. That is why we endure. That is why we stand before you when others have fallen. The word struck the chamber like lightning. Some lowered their heads, ashamed. Others clenched their fists in defiance. But none could deny the weight of what they had heard. The second judge rose, his horned head trembling. You speak as if humanity cannot be stopped, as if you will rise above every world, every species, every empire. Do you claim the galaxy itself must bow to you? The human's answer was simple, quiet, and devastating. We do not ask for the galaxy to bow, but if the galaxy tests us, it will learn what you have learned today, that we will not fall, that we will not break, that we will turn even your weapons into our strength, and when the storm passes, we will still be standing. A shiver passed through the hall. For a long moment, no one spoke. The ambassadors stared, their faces pale. The soldiers tightened their grips on their weapons, though none dared to lift them. Even the council leader's silver skin seemed dimmer, his pride cracking under the weight of fear. The human lowered the root to the tray, placing it carefully, as if returning a sacred relic. Then he stepped back, his hands empty, his voice calm. This trial is finished. You wanted to know what humanity is. Now you know. You can fear us. You can hate us. You can fight us. But you cannot ignore us. Not anymore. The gallery erupted. Some shouted in anger, swearing that humanity must be contained. Others cried out that alliances must be made quickly before it was too late. The chamber was chaos, but beneath the chaos was something stronger. It was change. The council leader raised his staff, once more, desperate to reclaim his authority. But his voice no longer carried. No one listened. He shouted, but his words were drowned by the tide. His power had broken, just as the council itself had broken. The human stood alone, yet not alone. Behind him were the voices of his ancestors, the lessons of generations, the memory of every struggle written in scars and graves. In that moment, he was not one man. He was the living memory of an entire species. And the galaxy could see it. The third judge, his translucent veins glowing faintly, leaned forward and whispered words that carried further than he intended. If this is what one human can do, what will they all do together? The question silenced the chamber once more. It was a thought that none wanted to speak aloud, yet all of them shared. Humanity had been underestimated for too long. They had been dismissed as reckless wanderers, primitive survivors of a harsh world. But now the truth was revealed. Humanity was not reckless. Humanity was inevitable. The human turned toward the great doors of the chamber. He did not wait for permission. He did not bow. He simply walked. The guards parted before him, not from respect, but from fear. His steps echoed against the stone floor, steady and unbroken. Behind him, the chamber erupted once more, but he did not look back. As he reached the doors, he paused only once. His voice carried across the hall, quiet yet final. On Earth, we have a saying, "What does not kill us makes us stronger." Today, you try to kill us with knowledge, but you only made us stronger. Then the doors opened, and he stepped into the light beyond. The council remained frozen in silence. The ambassadors stared at one another, uncertain of what the future now held. The soldiers shifted uneasily, their hands trembling, and the galaxy itself seemed to pause, as if holding its breath. The trial was over. The human had not only passed, he had changed everything. From that day forward, the galaxy would speak of the trial not as a judgment, but as a revelation. The day the council broke, The day fear turned to respect. The day humanity revealed itself, not as fragile wanderers, but as the species that endured. And in the silence that followed, a single truth burned brighter than any star. The galaxy would never be the same again.